I must say, ladies and gentlemen, I regard as a counsel of despair and a shocking display of political cynicism by the murderous, thuggish, bestial regime in Iran. The notion of TINA standing, of course, for there is no alternative, or no alternative that won't immediately breed or mutate into chaos. Why do I say what shocking cynicism? Well, Khomeini and Raisi, and by the way, neither is fit to wipe the boots of anybody here present today, cannot begin to conceptualize, still less to articulate, a defense of their own record, their economic record, which is disastrous, their human rights abuse, which is egregious, their disregard for basic principles of good government, which is relentless and ongoing, and therefore they are left with the pathetic, feeble, despicable fallback position of saying, we can't really say much good about ourselves, but there is no alternative but for chaos to ensue. And of course, it's all about, ladies and gentlemen, is it not? Because there's a rationale for this, however despicable, the battle of wills. It's about the battle of wills, ladies and gentlemen, and I say the battle of wills because if they can persuade people who are not part of their regime to be numbed by the seeming inevitability of it all and to fall victim to the monstrous lie that nothing can be done about it, well, they are then 2/3, 3/4, 9/10 of the way to ensuring their own self-serving continuation in the appalling discharge of their responsibilities of office. And of course, that argument segues neatly into what I'll call, if I may so dignify it, which I probably shouldn't, the appeasement thesis. The appeasement thesis, well, they're not very nice, but we've got to appease them. We've got to acknowledge them. We've got to accommodate them. We've got to some extent, for better or for worse, to accept them. None of those things is true, not for a moment. And we've had some inspiring and sagacious words today. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, I will be permitted as a Brit to remind you of what the late and great Sir Winston Churchill had to say about appeasement in the 1930s in respect of a government then led in the 30s, but very badly, by his own party. This is what Churchill had to say before, thankfully, the country had the benefit of his services in time. There we see my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, on the front bench, pursuing his policy of appeasement, resolved only to be irresolute, adamant for drift, solid for fluidity, all-powerful to be impotent. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a counsel of despair then, and it's a counsel of despair now, and it's a counsel of despair that we should unhesitatingly reject. Of course, change is possible if those who are the victims of the present barbarism will that change. Whatever our politics here, and I see people from my own country who've held distinguished office on both sides of the political divide, none of us is likely to say that the resolution of political problems is easy or quick. Indeed, some problems are intractable. They're not simple. They're not without complication or ups and downs. But what is simple is the choice between a government chosen by the people and a government imposed upon the people. And on that central principle of whether you have a free political system or not, you cannot frankly impale yourself on a spiky fence, or not without very considerable risk to your own person and to a great many others besides. There is, of course, an alternative. There is an alternative of over 40 years' preparation that is well organised, that is soundly structured, that is adequately resourced, that is conceptually coherent, and is led with indefatigability, with indestructibility, and with inexhaustibility by Madame Rajavi. And what a piquancy there is, Madame Rajavi, about the fact that up against this brutal, vicious, inhuman and misogynistic regime, there stands a movement led by a woman who is an example to the world and deserves its support.
We also acknowledge the perilous policy of engagement with the regime, which undermines both the cause of democracy in Iran and the cherished values that underpin our own societies. By turning a blind eye to the regime's heinous human rights abuses and aggressive behavior, we inadvertently legitimize its oppressive rule and escalate threats to global peace and security. And so it is time to recalibrate this approach, prioritizing support for the Iranian people's unwavering quest for freedom and democracy. Now is not the time to make more concessions to a regime that has proven to be unworthy of any form of trust. It is time for clear decisiveness. By taking hostages and unleashing terrorism, the current criminal rulers of Iran try to blackmail us. We must not cave in, and retreat is out of the question. It is time to extend our full support to the MEK members in Ashraf and protect their fundamental rights against any onslaught by the regime. We must recognize that underneath the regime's enthusiastic embrace for what they see as appeasement is an unmistakable fear. They fear the growing impact and influence of the opposition forces inside Iran. They recognize that the National Council of Resistance of Iran is a threat to their tyrannical rule, a formidable threat to their tyrannical rule. This recognition in itself is a resounding confirmation of the potency and efficacy of the NCRI under the visionary leadership of Madame Rajavi. Mrs. Rajavi's 10-point plan, which mirrors the democratic values cherished by the international community and which Americans recognize as being truly Jeffersonian, stands as a beacon of hope, illuminating the path towards a democratic Iran where freedom, justice, and human rights will prevail.